So I think with that, we're at time. I think we've about a couple of minutes left. So I'll open it up to the audience questions if you have any.
Well, first of all, thank you for a very insightful discussion. We've been focusing on employees, which I understand why, but with regards to my work, I came across another group, which is directors. I'm from international companies, we have joint ventures with other third parties, and sometimes we have joint venture partner who is financial partner, who is not managing business, but they appoint their own directors to the board of the project company, and they have access to the information, including IP and know-hows, which are not, but like something invented, as part of a people's maintenance or whatever. So they are not employees of the project company, but they are directors, so they have this fiduciary duty is a project company. At the same time, they are employees of their own shareholder with them. So this kind of conflict. And then like you don't have immediate influence with them, but you know they have access to the information. Like how do you meditate to make sure they are not disclosing more than they should, or if they do, then this is not used more than it should.
I can take that very briefly. When we typically set up JVs, where one company contributes IP, the other company contributes capital, and they have someone on their work that's part of the capital CPA company, we typically guide them and recommend that they keep the information at that level on a basis and a must-have basis. Just because typically on the board level, they don't need to be built and know every intricate detail about how it's going to do this and whatnot.
I personally dislike JVs, dislike joint ownership. Anything where there can be that kind of tension on who has access, who gets it. When it's come up, it has been a tension, and we've had those internal discussions on how do we focus. And like Inka said, and like Andrea said before, need to know is very important.
Agreed. I would just echo that. Like first principles of trade secret protection. First principles need to be.
To me, that's a potential insider threat case. I would want to ensure that they have adequate accounting to access and permissions to access data, because too many of those people are working off of Gmail. Right. So, for me, if we for some reason we do grant access, I would want to get kind of a one-way thing where they come to like our portal and we control accounts and we monitor expired accounts.
Any other questions?
I think actually that's time.
Well, we're at that. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, speakers. What we have next is a case study presentation when compliance becomes complicity with AR, law firms, and the new architecture of global financial crime. And to present that, may I call on stage Juan Carlos Ortega Jaimes.
Okay, good morning everybody. My name is Juan Carlos Portilla. So I'm going to talk about financial crime, compliance, attorneys, and AI. So how many of you, and feel free to answer my question, how many of you are familiar with any laws fighting global financial crime at all? So what could be financial crime for you? Any thoughts? So if not, we have here on the screen So on the left, we got there the main three financial crime that the global policymakers take care of, which is money laundering, terrorist financing, and the financing of proliferation of the weapons of mass destruction. So those are the three most important and delicate financial crime in the world. And on the right side, we have the crimes that create criminal profit, right? Because money laundering itself doesn't create any profit. So we need a crime behind to create that criminal profit. And we are talking about here drug trafficking, human trafficking, arms smuggling, white-collar crime like securities fraud, corruption, tax evasion, bank fraud, financial fraud, and also we got cyber crime. So all of these crimes are perpetrated by organized crime. It could be a drug cartel in Mexico. It could be a drug cartel in Colombia, my home country. It could be a human trafficking cartel operated in China or Malaysia or in India. If we're talking about white-collar crime, we can talk about criminal organizations very close from here, Wall Street. Bernard Madoff, all of the big Wall Street scandal, securities fraud, market manipulation, insider trading, so on and so forth. And now we got also cyber crime made by fintech, crime made by crypto, or using Bitcoin. Right now, we have a lot of platforms, fintech, incorporated in Europe, here in the States, in Asia. They can offer the customers to open multi-currency accounts. And for instance, if you are here in New York and you're going to Madrid to do business, you don't have to go to the bank to exchange dollars or euros. Using the app, you can go on your cell phone, and using the multi-currency account, you can convert dollars into euros and go to Spain and with the app, spending euros like a local. This is great. That's the fantastic news of technology. Nonetheless, criminal organizations are using these multi-currency accounts to move criminal money across the globe without proper control from authorities and from compliance. So criminals can move money from dollars to Mexican pesos to euros to any currency in the world. Most of those guys are offering multi-currency account in more than 45 currencies in the world. So let us focus right now on financial crime. What could be the main difference between money laundering and terrorist financing from a compliance perspective or from a drug trafficking prosecutor or anti-money laundering prosecutor or an attorney or a compliance officer? Any thoughts, any difference between the money laundering and terrorist financing? Well, the difference is simple, but it's very important. Why? In money laundering cases, the money flows in a circular way. Start here in this point, start to travel throughout the financial system, all the way back to the place it started, making a circle in the flow of the money. Why? Because criminal organizations, they are like corporations. They got together to do business, criminal business. So the one who sells a key, a Malaysian key to a customer in the US, they want that money back. They want the money back, the money that the client in the US is paying for that key to have sex or drugs, right? Or the securities fraud across the street here in Wall Street. Those guys, they want the money back. That's the reason why the money is struggling, because they do the 3 stages of money laundering: placement, lawyering, and reintegration. They have to place the money in the formal economy through the financial system. They have to do many transactions as possible: withdrawals, checks, wire transfer, multi-currency account activity, stock market operations. Why? Because they need to separate themselves, the criminal organization and the crime itself, from the eyes of the authorities and the compliance officer of the financial institution and an attorney. And then they reintegrate the money into the formal economy by acquiring art, buildings, real estate, investing in business, in corporations, etc. So that's the reason why the money goes in a circular way. In terrorist financing, the criminal, they don't care if the money gets back to them. What they do care is that the money goes to the terrorist organizations to commit the crime. That's the reason why the flow of the money in terrorist financing is not circular, it's linear. Because the one who is sponsoring the terrorist attack, they don't care if they get the money back. Actually, they do care that the money is being spent and invest in the terrorist attack. And it could be criminal money, like Al Qaeda, or it could be legal money. Why? Because there are legal institutions for religious purposes, political purposes, that they create legal money, but they support terrorist activities across the globe. That's critical. And now we have the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, like North Korea, Iran, right now. They need the money to support the development of chemical weapons, nuclear weapons, biotech weapons, coronavirus, whatever is the case, because the war is being on war. And that's very important that compliance officers, prosecutors are aware of this defense. Okay, so now you think, well, that's great. So I understand that the financial institutions, banks, fintech, securities broker dealers, they must by law to have compliance departments, compliance programs, compliance officers, and some financial crime investigators. Because international law, my practice is international law, and I teach international law. Because international law, the foreign recommendation of the Financial Action Task Force commands states across the globe to set up laws that the financial institution shall comply with and to have these compliance programs. Okay, of course. What about attorneys? What about law firms? What about you guys? So we don't have a well-settled body of international law and domestic law commanding attorneys to set up compliance program, to do due diligence, to do internal investigation, and eventually report suspicious activity related to money laundering or terrorist financing. We don't have it. Nonetheless, in international law, the state practice, the practice of governments across the globe, create international law, therefore domestic law, plus the best practice for law, for the law profession. Why? It's very important that attorneys and international firms get into this equation, because we as an attorneys, we are the gatekeepers of the formal economy. We can close the door for the criminal organization to use the formal economy to launder the money, or we can open the door for them, right? Why international lawyers and attorneys here in the US and across the globe, they are so attractive to criminal organizations? They're like, wow, Tom Cruise, wow, Jennifer Lopez. They are super attractive. Why? because the attorneys can offer services, legal services, to criminal enterprises. For example, drafting contracts, creating corporations, creating trusts, opening business accounts. So we got the knowledge to offer the client to do this kind of private law, contract law, corporate law, international business transaction law, and the criminal see, oh, the attorney can help me to set up my trust in the Bahamas so I can launder my money. The attorney can set up a LLC company in Florida or Delaware, even here in the state of New York, and through that LLC, I can move my criminal money from drug trafficking, from human trafficking, from corruption, from tax evasion. So it's very important to know that we can be the gatekeepers. I'm gonna throw something very controversial. Attorney-client privilege versus the duty to report suspicious activity related to money laundering. We know that having a legal counsel at trial is a fundamental right. It's part of the international human rights law. It's part of the US Constitution, the famous case in Florida. So all defendants, they have the right to have a legal counsel for past crimes. So former criminal came to my office, oh, I'm being prosecuted by the government. I commit money laundering 3 years ago. Could you please defend me? Sure, that's part of the legal profession. It's totally legal. And if we accept the representation, we have duties to that client, right? But what about if the criminal organization knock on the door at your office here in Manhattan, in Buenos Aires, in Tokyo, in Mexico, in Monterrey, the big city, Sao Paulo, and see, Mr. Attorney, I need you to set up some LLC in Florida because I am conducting an ongoing money laundering scheme across the globe. Do you have attorney-client privilege in that cases? No, because the law firm is being used for criminal purposes. Actually, you have many duties under the law to report that activity and to say no. Okay, so with that in mind, so criminal organizations, they love the lawyer's client's account because it's the best vehicle to move money fast and with no suspicious. Funds in coming from the drug trafficking ring, funds in coming from Wall Street, funds in coming from human trafficking. Oh, that criminal money is going to the attorney's account. When the compliance officer at the bank in Mexico, here in Manhattan, in Boston, in Colombia, they see all the money is coming into the attorney's account, that is fine. He is an attorney. She is an attorney. That's part of the business. But then, funds, the money goes out quickly, the same day, the day after, and not in $50, thousands of dollars, maybe millions of dollars, in terms of wire transfer, checks, any kind of money movement. In that case, that activity is suspicious, and somehow that activity has to be reported either by the attorney to the proper authorities, if we're talking about an ongoing criminal scheme, and by the bank or the fintech or the securities broker dealer. A man in Mexico who is making transfer from Mexico into the US or receiving transfer from the US to Mexico, seeing this money movement in an attorney's banking account, that is suspicious. So what's going on here? Is the attorney being used by a criminal enterprise to move criminal money? Well, good point. So moving forward, let's keep moving. So we have a global war on money laundering. Organized crime is profitable. 3.6% of the global GDP is criminal, is produced by criminal organization. That's huge, right? So profitable crime, corruption, tax crime, market manipulation, human trafficking, I already mentioned that. So the criminal money needs to be somehow clean. Dirty money has to be clean. The battlefield of this global war on money laundering is the global financial system and the global law industry. There is no question about it. Banks, fintech, and firms, law firms. That's the battlefield of this war. Okay, gatekeepers, I already mentioned. Yes, we are. This is the most beautiful legal services that criminal enterprises are looking from us, from attorneys. So we got a couple of interesting cases. So I just want to wrap up because my time is coming to an end. So my point is, guys, if you are in the financial sector, if you are working for the government, if you are practicing law in New York, in Mexico, Monterrey, Sao Paulo, Bogotá, Buenos Aires, Madrid, Paris, Brussels, Tokyo, Beijing, you have to be aware that maybe you are being used by criminal organizations for money laundering purposes. If we're talking about past crimes and you are defending a criminal organization from money laundering prosecution, that's fine. That's legal. That's part of our job. We have to provide those services and we have the duty of confidentiality and the duty of autonomy and privilege to our clients. Nonetheless, that's the main message I want to get across. Nonetheless, nevertheless, if the law firm is being used by criminal organizations to launder money on an ongoing basis, there is no attorney-client privilege applying, and you can be in the hole. You can be in trouble with them. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and have a wonderful day. Good.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we continue with our next panel, we'd like to extend our sincere gratitude to our valued sponsors, our presenting partner, MRS Business Professional, Platinum and Lanyard sponsor Filevine, Diamond sponsors GCAI, Checkbox, ALN, Link Squares, Zeo, Labora, Emilio, Spot Draft. Our gold sponsors Steptoe, Kirani Abogados, Full Solutions, and our exhibitor, Point One. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our next panel discussion is on whistleblowers, internal investigations, and privilege.
Bye guys, we have a wonderful presentation. Me fue muy bien. En la tarde la premiación de mi premio. Nos vemos más tarde. Chao. Voy a estar también en vivo en mis redes sociales por la tarde. Chao.